Diane Kastner is founder and executive editor of Running Wild Press. Honored with 2 Best of 2019 and 2 Best of 2020 books, according to Kirkus Reviews, her authors have garnered several starred reviews as well as additional acclaim. In 2021, Lisa was named to Yahoo Finance's Top 10 Entrepreneurs to Watch, New York Weekly's Top 10 Females to Watch, and LA Wire's Top 10 Businesses to Watch lists. Featured in Forbes, she was nominated to Forbes Next 1000, a list of American self-funded entrepreneurs who continue to strive during the challenging times of COVID. Lisa resides in Los Angeles, California, with her husband and 2 felines, Master and Margarita. All yours, Lisa.
Thank you. First, it's truly an honor to be here. When Michelle approached me and asked if I would be willing to come and talk, I was like, wait, really? Oh, okay, cool. Just to make sure, one thing that's a thing for me, I want to make sure that I fulfill the objectives of you, right, the attendees. So I was wondering, what attracted you to join this chat? Either if you could put your answer in the chat, or, as Michelle said, go ahead and raise your hand. So then, we can hear from you. So what made you say, you know what, I want to find out more about being more active in my career progression as a writer? Okay, cool.
Well, I'll start. Because I have a trilogy finished and I'm going to start hunting for an agent, and I'm working on a science fiction right now that I'm 70,000 words into. So it's about time to think about actually launching a writing career. I've never done that before. I've just spent my time writing and building my skill set. So now it's time. So that's it.
Awesome.
Are you asking questions for us right now?
Yeah, right now.
Oh, well, I just, hi, I just published another one of my crime series, a novel, the 4th one, and I'm still trying to figure out how to market my books. So I'm in a hole, I'll admit, and I just don't know really what to do at this point. My first book was actually published by a small publisher, and they went out of business a year later. But the other 3 have been self-published, so I'm still trying to figure out how to market.
Got it. Cool. Okay, so Lynette says, because knowledge is power, the more I learn, the better. I'm right there with you. Hap says, I needed others who like to write. I want to publish a book of poetry someday, but I have a ways to go. Wilma says, I am self-publishing and need to market. Let's see. Julie says, understanding the current publishing industry, how, when to market, relative to finishing the book, and where to start with agents, publishers, editors. Kristen says, I need all the help to get toward the publishing part of my journey. Marsh says, please don't. Okay, I won't share this. Okay, got that. And then Alicia asked, is Running Wild traditional or a hybrid? We're a small press. We're more traditional. We actually have an agent that represents all of our books. So when you sign with us, unless you say otherwise, you're also bringing on board, in essence, the agency who then goes forward and works on having the stories licensed for anything from audiobook to TV to film. So Pamela says that makes us a little bit different. Pamela says, I coach creative people, always looking for more tips for myself and others. Been freelancing since '87. Wow, good for you. And Tammy says, I have a great story, just need to get my writing to the next level. So, okay, so a lot of this is more around wanting to understand more around marketing and all that, which is great. what I'm going to share with you are some tips that I've actually gotten and I use regularly that I've gotten from career coaches, as well as from huge best-selling novelists. And these are the kinds of things that they've done themselves in order to make sure that they are successful in their career. So first, what I want to do is ask everyone to take a second, just close your eyes and envision where you want to be in the next 5, 10 years. Are you a full-time best-selling author? Are you teaching at colleges? Are you attending and speaking at conferences? Are you doing everything? Yes, you're doing, oh, you're alive. Well, I hope you're alive. And I just jot this down, like literally write this down. And this is free form, right? So it can be something ridiculous like, you know, I'm the biggest superstar on TV. Why not? This is your vision. This is your imagination. Go big, man, right? Really have fun with this. Now, what kind of writer do you want to be? And I want to have you think about this more from like a branding perspective, and this will make more sense in a minute. Do you want to be known as the most phenomenal thriller writer on the planet? Do you want to be known as the Queen of Cozy Mysteries or King of Cozy Mysteries? I don't know. Do you want to be known as an amazing eclectic author? You got your hands on a little bit of everything?
Yes.
And again, jot this down and go big. Do you want to be the most acclaimed New York Times best-selling journalist?
No.
Now, for me, I actually started Running Wild with the intent to change the world through story. So everything that I do and that we do at Running Wild aligns to that mission, to that vision. So that's not just the stories that we acquire, but that's my own personal writing. And so whenever I'm asked to speak somewhere, or whenever I'm asked to write an article or anything, my purpose is to change the world through story. So what is it? A few people, what's your vision for yourself? Where do you see yourself? What's your purpose?
All right.
And Karen, I don't know if you're aware, you're unmuted, so we can hear your background, just so you know. If you're interested or willing to share your own vision for yourself, just raise your hand or put it in the chat, either way. Dina.
Yeah, hi, I'm sorry. I have, I look terrible today, so I can't show my face.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
I have, thank you very much. Yeah, I guess I would like to be known as this person that writes these incredibly bizarre, intriguing stories that the person that knows me, when they read my next story, they're like, wow, and she wrote that? Because everything I've written so far, and I've actually stopped writing my novel, and now I've just been concentrating on short stories, and I'm really getting into all the different, I'm writing literary fiction, short stories, you know, character driven. And so I'm just really getting into all the different ways that I can present what's going on. And I would love to be known as the person that is doing that and people looking to read my stuff. That would be my dream. Was that your question? Yikes.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you. Hap says, I want to go live and act out my poetry. It's very humorous. Well, that's fun. Anybody else willing to share? What's your vision for? This is like the who do you want to be when you grow up kind of question, right?
All right, I have one.
Sure.
But you're talking about 5 or 10 years. I'm 83, so 10 years becomes a bit of a problem there. But I do have, like most writers, we have dreams, and I have a dream. And most of my books have been published traditionally, and I have one coming out next month, and it's by a 5-star, and it's a Western. And I have I think my dream is, and I think it's a good Western. And it's going to be nominated for a Spur Award, which is the best Western of the Year award. Now, on that level, obviously, that's part in my life. Winning a Spur Award, I've won some other awards in writing, but the Spur Award would be that's about kind of the apex of my career. I've written a couple of, this is my second Western that will be published. My others were not Westerns, although they were related to the West in terms of where they happened. But yes, I have a very specific goal that would be next year. And at 83, I figure that's about as far as I can go. It's about a year ahead of time. You never know at that age. I may, last 20 years, who knows? But I'm being my goals are much more centered around the immediate.
Got it.
So
those are fabulous goals, by the way. So, okay, cool. Those were great. And we've got a few responses in the chat as well. I see myself as pushing the forefront of sci-fi, adventure, and philosophy. I'd like to influence change in the world as well. That's amazing. I'd be satisfied with editing as my regular source of income because I know writing is kind of a hit or miss profession. And if I could publish my 3 books in progress so far, and I'd have my fantasy book as a bestseller, so I'd be happy as a clam. Yeah, I totally feel that. Awesome. All right. These are great. I hope everybody wrote down what your vision is for yourself. Now, based on this, I want you to write down what have you already accomplished, to write down those of you who've already accomplished what you want to accomplish, meaning what things have you already done in your life that align to that overall vision for yourself? So Daniel's asking me, how would I like to change the world, in what way? So when I started Running Wild, I started it because I knew tons of fantastic authors who simply could not get published. They could not get the attention of traditional publishing whatsoever. And I really didn't understand why. It didn't make any sense to me. And I was literally on my first date with my husband, and I mentioned this to him, and he said, well, why don't you just start your own press? And I thought, I'm allowed to do that? Like, that's a thing, that's a possibility. So I actually interviewed several agents and also a few editors from the big houses, because at the time, and actually I still, I was teaching at conferences, I was speaking at conferences. And so I would pull aside an agent or an editor and just say, hey, I'd love to buy you a glass of wine, or I'd love to buy you a drink. And we would just chat. And that's when I found out how books are selected by the large houses. And it opened up a world for me of understanding as to why so many great writers just simply can't get picked up. And I was also at that point lucky enough to have already been an acquisitions editor for a couple of different smaller publications, and figured, and one of the authors that I actually had gone to bat for, his short story then became a full-length novel, and it did get picked up, and it actually sold in the millions. That was by Jamie Ford. I don't know if you know Jamie, and he was kind enough to mention me in his opening credits. So it also made me become very aware that there's a lot of stories out there that are quite meaningful and that can really help others and enable us to see, you know, a lot of people that you read, you're attracted to writing because you want to see yourself in those characters, right? And there's a very large section of our population who don't have that privilege. So, you know, a lot of the stories that we write enable you to see yourself within those characters. So I don't know if I directly answered your question, but that's a very indirect, I guess, way of answering. Okay, so now what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to go down a couple of different paths with this, right? So when people have a writing career, it's typically not just they're home and they're knocking out novels, right? Usually what it is they're writing short stories and novellas and pieces that are picked up by other publications. That's how you build a following, right? It is one way to build a following. So I'm gonna take you down that path and help you in terms of building out like a timeline, in essence, like a project plan associated with that. Another path where you are building your reputation and you're building your following is through things like making appearances at wonderful organizations such as this one, at conferences, at larger gatherings. And it's both the kind where it's targeted toward other writers, but it's also those that are targeted toward fans. So remember that, right? You've just spent, I'm assuming all of us have spent years writing, and most of the conferences and most of the gatherings that you've attended, I'm going to guess, were more so focused on you, right? On building your chops. And that meant the other people who were there were writers. That doesn't necessarily mean they aren't readers as well. I'm praying that you also read. And I've also found out in the past that sometimes I'm wrong in that. But you need to attend, you need to attend and be a guest in different gatherings that are more so targeted towards those readers, right? And again, that's how you continue to build that following. So what I want you to do is we're going to first do the focus on finding venues for your writing. So I'm going to ask everyone, you're going to go offline for a minute, meaning you can turn off your cameras if you want. You don't have to. It's fun, and it just means we're going to watch you as you're Googling. I'm going to toss in the chat my mouse will be kind to me. I want you to go to this website, Rollin.com. You could also go to, if you don't want to use Rollin, you could also use actually, no, let's do this one.
Valerie,
Yes,
can you mute yourself?
I am muted.
No, you're
according to
not.
my deal here.
Okay, you're not. I'm sorry. Okay, you're not though.
So I want you to go to one of these. Oh, that should be, I typed it wrong. I apologize. Let me fix this. It should be /literary_magazines. Now Rollin has a huge listing of various publications. And it can be anything from most of them are probably gonna look for short stories. I'm gonna challenge you to focus on those publications that are paid, because they have paid, they have some paid, some not paid, and then they have ones that don't pay at all. I'm not sure about pw.org. I'm gonna guess those are mostly paid. And I want you to go on there and, based on that vision for yourself and where you want to be, who you want to be when you grow up, or as was earlier mentioned, where you want to be in a year, select a few. And for those of you who are, because we have quite a few people here who you've either written novels and you're looking for an agent, or you've written novels and you've self-published them, this is for you as well, because there's a big opportunity that you may be missing out on. You've created these wonderful worlds and you've created these amazing characters, and they're doing things outside of that core storyline, right? So take this opportunity to create smaller stories with these same fantastic characters and get them in readers' hands with these smaller publications. And we'll talk a little bit about, if you're not sure about structure, you're not as well versed necessarily as writing short stories, we can talk about how we can get you those short story structures in a minute. But I want you all to take 5 minutes, go off, go to rollin.com, go to PW. You could also go to newpages.com, any one of them. And like I said, pick a handful and then come back. And when you're done, do me a favor and just raise your hand so that myself and Michelle know you're done.
I'm sorry, Karen Robinson, can you mute? And Marilyn Joy and Becky Miller and Gerald. Can you please mute yourselves? Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Becky.
I'm on an iPad. I don't know how to do it.
Okay, you pop up in
click.
okay, sorry, but you pop up and take over the speaker view when you talk. Hi. Anyway, all right.
Gerald and those guys that are having trouble with muting or unmuting, right-click your picture and then choose mute.
Okay.
Right-click your picture and then choose mute.
When I right click, nothing happens.
You don't get a menu?
No, I got an iPad.
Is there a mute sign on your?
There is the mute sign, but then you guys will be.
There it is. You got it. Now we can't hear you, of course.
So in about 2-3 minutes, I'm going to ask for a few people, if you're willing, to share what you found. And mind you, you don't have to have a huge list right now, right? The intent of this is to kind of get you jump started. So you're going to have a whole lot of homework. Hey, Daniel. So Daniel just noted that he didn't see anything useful at Rollin. Rollin actually, Rollin.com, it's not a literary magazine. If you look at the top, you'll see a list that says markets, pro, semi-pro, paid, token, anthologies, books, and so on. You want to click on one of those, and then it breaks out the different publications that you can submit to. And typically it's broken out by genre. PW is admittedly more so literary, and Rollin's more so genre. A wide variety of genres. So did anybody find any magazines or publications that they feel what they're looking for aligns to where you want to be, what you want to do?
I think I need to spend more time with it.
Yeah.
It's pretty extensive, but
Yeah,
I
they
found a
had-
couple of possibilities. So.
Okay, cool.
And I think for me, this is Ellen Wolf.
Hey.
Just knowing that this is here, I had no idea these existed, and I am just really grateful to know about them. And I see some possibilities. I've published a memoir, and maybe submitting a chapter, or maybe submitting an article about my my memoir that might pique someone's interest. So thank you. Yeah, this is definitely the beginning of a lot of homework.
Well, and don't forget, you want to make sure, so these are ones that align to what your mission and vision is for yourself and what you're writing, especially with memoir. Don't forget that you can also, and actually remember, you are an expert at whatever it is that you have researched to write whatever it is that you wrote, right? And with memoir, you're an expert, obviously, at a variety of things that are associated. It can be associated directly with your memoir, or it could be things that are impacted within your life. And so you can write about those things that you've researched. And then your bio would mention that you've written a memoir, or you've written a book, or you've written, you know, whatever the case may be, right? And then that way it helps promote the piece. It also establishes you as a subject matter expert within that space.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I wrote my memoirs about surviving the loss of an adult child. And it just dawned on me that I need to write a companion piece to it. I have spent a large part of my career teaching stress management and working for some big names doing that, and going into the corporate world and teaching stress management. So my companion piece to Grateful for the Color Blue is going to be grateful for stress management, or it's going to flow from the first, and I'm excited about that.
Now, what's fabulous about what your day career was, or potentially still is, you could write, to your point, like a how-to on stress management.
Mhm,
And you can put that out and build a following with that.
mhm.
That would then bleed into when you publish your memoir, right? And you can also write smaller stories, or rather smaller pieces, and submit them to like the LA Times. You know, you can pitch, you can query around those pieces as well. And again, it's another opportunity to get the word out about you, about the fact that you've written this memoir. And guys, even if you don't have a publisher, even if you don't have an agent, you can always mention within your creds that you have written this fantastic piece, right? And that you are currently querying for agents. I'll be honest, I don't think you have to do that. You can simply mention that you've written this bit of fabulousness, right? Whether it's a full-length novel, whether it's a memoir, whether it's a short story collection, whether it's a poetry collection, because believe it or not, agents are always looking for new people to represent who have a following, and they're going to assume that because you were published within this magazine, journal, a newspaper, whatever the case may be, that you have a following, right? Because these people have now read your work.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I found I really haven't marketed my book at all. And I published it in 2020, and it's been every month I sell probably 20 books, which is great because there's such a need for it. And
right.
Yeah, so.
And what's also
She also
really
won a Writer's Digest 5-star review, I believe. Is that not correct?
Oh, say that again, Michelle.
Writer's Digest, didn't they give you a 5-star review on it?
Oh, they did. Yeah, absolutely. Outstanding, they said. Yay.
you want to make sure you mention that in your bio.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I'll be honest, like whenever I hear someone read my bio, I start looking around the room like, who the hell is that? Because I'm just this chick who lives in LA and loves Mexican food, right? Like, and like sushi. Like, why I can't eat it sounds like someone else, right?
Mhm,
But
mhm.
and it feels egregious, like, holy crap, you know, how dare I mention all this stuff, right? But the reality is people are attracted to that. They want to know about your fabulousness, right? And you know, that then again builds a following where you actually then get invited to write for other publications. And I can talk about a little bit how I've personally used this method as well, that we're continuing to do now. What I want you guys to do is, as you're finding those publications that align to your overall mission and vision, look at when they are accepting work. And you want to keep that in mind, right? Well, not just keep it in mind. You're going to write a plan. And in that plan, based on their submission schedule, you're going to figure out what you're going to prioritize. So what I mean by that is, let's say, so I wrote, it's like a sci-fi, well, not really. It's more of like a thriller, horror, fantasy piece. And it's gotten some amazing blurbs, like really, really fantastic reviews, some incredible reviews. And it was actually suggested by one of the reviewers, you know, you should really go out and write short stories based on these same characters. And I was then asked to query to come up with a proposed short story to then query to a specific publication. And I've since then written that short story. I'm waiting for feedback on it now, right? But that then means that when my novel comes out, because that short story will most likely come out in the magazine before the novel, I'm building a fan base for that story and for those characters, because it's the same characters in that same universe, but focused on the genre that that publication has. Now, remember what I just said. It's a thriller slash horror slash fantasy, right? The publication is focused on mysteries. Well, then I'm sure a lot of people are sitting here saying, well, how can that be? Right? It's not the same story. It's not the same story, but it's the same characters put in a mystery story. So I went and I looked up the structure for mysteries, and I created a brand new story with those same characters in that same world, but leveraging a mystery structure. And you can do the exact same thing, right? So again, don't limit yourself by what you've done in the immediate, right? You want to expand it so that you then can build followings in multiple places. Does this make sense? Okay. And for everyone who's self-published, this is especially helpful because, as you know, it's difficult to build a following, right? And it's difficult to get people because you don't have the same opportunities as those who are published with even a small press, because you don't have a distributor, you don't have a sales force behind it, right? Because you're self-published, you probably can't get your books into like libraries and schools because they only work with a specific distributor, and that distributor actually only works with the larger distributors. So there's a lot of challenges around getting your book in multiple areas. So with that, the more that you get published in other magazines and journals and other forums, the more people get to know you and your stories, and the more the greater likelihood they'll pick up your novels. Does this make sense? Okay, cool. All right. So again, you all now have homework to go through these different forums, identify the publications that would align to your overall mission and vision, and then create that timeline based on their submission, their different submission due dates. And then you're going to now write stories that you can then submit to them. Now, what's great about this too is now you're also building a library of more work. So let's say you submit somewhere and it doesn't get accepted. That's fine. You can then submit it to another publication, and now you actually have all of these listings of other publications that you can submit to. I challenge you though to first really just focus on the paid ones, because well, yeah, you know, Jerry's like, yeah, well, A, who doesn't want to get paid? B, they also tend to have oftentimes have a bigger following. And C, if you are someone who's looking for an agent, those agents are looking at those publications to find new authors. So Dina says, it sounds super hard to write something into a specific genre. I guess I misunderstood that idea when you talked about writing your piece as a mystery, even if it was sci-fi. It's not hard to write into a new genre. Honestly, all you need to do, if you guys want to do this right now, go open up Google and literally type in, and I'm just using mystery as an example, type in mystery structure. And there are actually several free sources that will tell you what the core structure is for a mystery. And you can use that as your way to actually create your key parts of the story, what those key elements are, and then write out the story. Mystery has a specific structure. Romance has a specific structure. I believe thriller has a specific structure. So if the publications that you've selected are for specific genres, then this is actually a great resource. Just simply, like I said, Google it and you can find it. So let's see.
Lisa, I have a question.
Yeah.
What you're describing here sounds like a sort of a model that writers may have used in the past. And one writer, for example, would be Agatha Christie,
Right.
who had characters that invaded all of her stories.
Mhm.
And of course, she's a classic. And there are others. I'm mostly interested in plays.
Mhm.
But she also changed her character. She started out writing about certain kinds of detectives. Some of them were English and ended up with some that were French and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So are you really looking for this group of people who get together and make her a classic because they become essentially hangers on to that genre? Are you looking for this group of people, but you don't know where they are and they're separated somehow? Is there a model for that?
So Albie, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, so
Are you talking
the simple
about
thing
readers?
would be, is there an author model that does what you have suggested?
Oh yeah. So this is actually that's a great question. I started so I actually provide that I'm a mentor for the Horror Writers Association and for several other organizations. And what I'm suggesting, I'm actually taking from Stephen King, Jonathan Mayberry, and a few other authors, meaning in terms of the details. So Stephen King is known for, he actually gave the first suggestion to Jonathan Mayberry, and he's given it to several other authors as well, that once you've built a universe, don't make it hard on yourself by trying to create more and more different environments, right? And completely go wild. Make it easy on yourself. And once you've created a world, just keep leveraging those that same world for other stories, right? And then actually helps you become much more prolific as well. And when I say world, I don't mean, this doesn't have to be like science fiction, right? Where everyone's on Mars or some other, right? It can look like, I literally, like the novel that I wrote, I put it in, I placed it in Camden, New Jersey, because I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, so I'm very familiar with that environment, but it's a fictionalized version, right, of Camden. And then, although that's the core of the location, it also helps me in terms of placement and setting, so that, you know, when my characters go off and wreak havoc, I have them go to like New York, because New York isn't all that far, right? I have them go to, you know, wherever. So this helps you, again, to build a library of stories faster, right? And again, also enables you to have expand your following, because if you've already got fans of these characters for the first book, then there's a greater likelihood that they're going to pick up that next book, or they're going to pick up that short story, because they're already fans of your characters. So Jonathan is infamous for doing this. I mean, every freaking genre he writes in, he's using the same characters, whether it be a thriller, a horror. He wrote an epic trilogy, right? An epic fantasy trilogy. And he set it in the same world as his horror stories, but like 50,000 years in the future. But again, for him, by doing that, it makes it a lot easier. So because he's already got these worlds in his head, right? That he's already developed. Does that help? Did I answer your question? Did that make sense? Okay, All right, that was a great
Hey,
question.
Lisa, there's
Yeah.
a question in the chat that's a little, perhaps a misconception you might want to address. Someone asked, does it make it harder to get picked up, your novel to get picked up, if you already have short stories out with those characters? Could you address that?
Oh gosh, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, again, a lot of times agents are go off and read short stories, and they're gonna come to you and say, "Holy moly, you're this phenomenal writer. Do you have anything else?" Right? I'd love to read it. It makes it 100 times easier. I actually know I'm friends with several agents, and they're very open about the fact that, like, if you go to them and say, "Hey, I wrote this book, and by the way, I've also published these additional short stories, and I've published these short stories that are in the same universe," man, they're going to start clapping, because like every house that they're going to approach, they're going to love the fact that you already have a fan base, and that fan base isn't just about you. That fan base is about those characters that you have now developed in that novel. Does that make sense? Gerald asks, do agents ignore self-published books? So agents, it depends on the agent. If your book has been self-published and it's got a big following, you'll probably a lot of agents will respond positively. What may also happen though, and again, this is it depends on the agent thing. So if you've self-published and you'd like to more traditionally publish, then typically some agents are going to ignore you because it's already copywritten material. And if it did not sell well, then they don't have a reason to pick it up, right? Because they're not going to make any money off of it. I mean, that's the reality, that they're there to make money. If you self-published and you're open to being edited and having the book revised, some agents will pick you up. The challenge comes in as to whether a publisher would pick you up. So again, if it's self-published, it's done well, it's already copywritten, there's no reason, there's no purpose for an agent or a publisher to pick you up. If it's self-published, but again, you're open to being edited, you're open to being revised, and it comes in, you then obviously publish it as like part 2 or something like that. Then some publishers will be willing to pick you up. So we actually have published a few authors who have self-published, and they wrote like a follow-up book, and we published the follow-up book, but with the understanding that, look, we're interested in the follow-up that has not been published before, but you have to be willing to be edited, because we have seen instances where some self-published authors, they don't want to be edited at all. They just want the publisher to pick it up. And oftentimes there's an opportunity to raise it to another level by partnering with an editor. So I hope that answered your question. So Marge says, I'm not sure I buy the assertion that publishing a short story in one literary magazine means you have a fan base. I agree. I'm not saying one. I just told you to go home and do homework. And that homework is for you to find multiple publications that you will then write stories to, and you will submit those stories. It's by publishing within multiple publications that you're building a fan base. So that was actually a fabulous question. Thank you. And then Marge says, I have 435 reviews for my traditionally published book on Amazon. Although the publisher did no marketing at all. That's not uncommon, by the way. And the publisher thinks that's not enough of a fan base. If that's true, then what makes a few readers of a literary magazine who may not even have read my story a fan base? So I think I already answered that question. I don't know who your publisher is. I don't know why they think 435 reviews isn't a fan base. My guess is that if you want to, Marge, you and I can talk offline. I want to better understand that comment, because my guess is it's probably not about the reviews. It's probably about the number of the amount of sales, which are two different things. So, Kevin says, guess I should start classifying my genres as adult sci-fi and fantasy instead of erotica, even when I look at books in those genres, and mine are nothing like them. Oh, okay, cool. Gerald asks, what exactly do you do to market your stable of books? So I actually, so as a publisher, we submit to tons of reviews. Again, the expectation by most reviewers is that, when I say reviews, I mean like Kirkus Reviews and Publishers Weekly and LA Times and New York Times. We have a long list of different organizations that do reviews. Those reviews are typically watched by libraries, bookstores. We then leverage those reviews in anything exactly what I just described, right? From the person's bio in there for associated with a short story or with a magazine or with an appearance, right? Because that enables them to, again, get the word out and get a larger following, right? So, okay, so that was part one. You have homework. You're going to go and create that project plan, right? Based on when the submission dates are for those different publications. And then now we're going to talk about how you're going to build your brand. So that's part one of building your brand, right? And part of your pre-homework. So that's basically building a career roadmap, right? This is actually also a great way for you to get new ideas for what your follow-up stories are going to be. Because you can, a lot of times, especially if you're someone who thinks more in like novel form, that short story can easily then get expanded into a novel, right? I do want to challenge you guys a little bit in that I have a sneaking suspicion many people here are going to say, well, I wrote a novel. I'm just going to submit a chapter of my novel. Please, 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 please don't do that. Because most, unless you're one of the rare few where your chapter is actually has a story arc, most people don't write chapters that each chapter has its own story arc. And what's most likely going to happen is a lot of these publications are probably going to turn it down because doesn't actually have a story arc, right? That's why I'm challenging you in using those same characters that you've already developed for your fantastic novels and creating new stories, short stories for these publications. And I don't want you to have your heart broken because you figured, hey, this will be the easy way to do it. It may actually end up being less effective than you hope. So you're basically taking your characters on a short new adventure. Exactly. That's exactly right. And again, it's an adventure that's now it's fitting under your mission and vision. It's also fitting under the mission and vision for that publication. Again, so you do have a greater likelihood of it actually being accepted because you know it's something that they want. Does that make sense? So before we go into how you're going to build your brand, and Gerald, this is probably going to more so address your questions about like, how do you publicize, right? How do you build that world, bring that forward more? Does anybody have any questions about building your career roadmap? And you want to blow this out to maybe about like a year's worth of potential publications to submit to. And then what you want to do, like I said, you're going to write to that, right? You're going to write to those publications. You're going to write towards their submission dates. And then I challenge you to do this maybe once a year. And you really want to also maybe once a year revisit the who do you want to be when you grow up, or who do you want to be in a year? Because it's going to change, right? The more that you write, the more that you're doing things, the more you're going to realize, you know, it may change is all I'm saying, right? And it's also good to have that reminder that of what your goals are, because it can be very easy to get sidetracked, right? Cool. Any other questions or comments? Feel free to unmute or raise your hand, whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay, cool. All right, now, talking about building your brand. So you know who you want to be when you grow up. You've got these great stories, right? How do you build your brand? One, you're gonna go online, and I want you to Google conferences, and these you're gonna first Google conferences that align to the stuff that you're amazing, right? So one of your homework assignments was to ask your bestie, or someone who knows you really well, your mom or your dad. That actually may not be, well, anyway, and ask them, what are you fabulous at, right? So I actually went to my husband and asked him, what am I really good at? And he was like, you're great at networking. You're great at, you know, getting things done, right? Developing action plans. Someone else had come forward and said, oh, you know, you're great at editing, right? I have a decent eye for talent, from what I hear. So I then looked up conferences and workshops where I could teach a class on how to develop your project plan, right? So exactly what we're talking about now. I've taught classes on how to be your own best editor. So I went online, and I want you to, well, actually, how about this? What are you guys great at? Just feel free, either raise your hand, blurt it out, put it in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with.
So you want us to look for writers, conferences, and workshops that might appeal to us? Is that what you want us to do?
It doesn't have to be a writers conference, right? So let's say you're amazing and an amazing knitter. So, you know, what events may gain benefit by learning about your talents in knitting? Like, where can you teach others how to knit? Do you build your own furniture? I don't know. I'm just making this up. What are you fabulous at?
And is that for the purpose of having us go out to teach, to build a brand? What's the connection?
So the intent, the purpose is, So you, whatever it is that you're fabulous at, you can then go out and teach classes or at conferences or do a TED talk or whatever, right? Associated with whatever it is that you're fabulous at. So it, like, I see, so let's say your forte is using your imagination, right? So I see Daniel put that in the chat. So Daniel, you could actually go out and you could develop like a 90-minute class that you could then teach at conferences on how to create new stories, right? Jerry Green says, sick humor is my forte. Hey, if you can, if you could teach a class on to someone on how to build a joke, sure, why not? Do it. Sorry, I'm reading in the chat. So Lynette says, I think sometimes it's easier to ask our good friends or family what we're fabulous at because we're always too hard on ourselves. Always found it easier to write someone else's resumes rather than my own. That's right. That was the whole intent of you having the homework, to go out and ask friends and family, what is it that you're fabulous at? Because we all are way too hard on ourselves, right? So the reason I'm specifying, you don't want to necessarily have this be a writer's conference, right? Is because, like, I know Michelle, Michelle, what's your novel about?
My current work in progress is a military sci-fi espionage.
Fabulous. Now, in order, so Michelle could actually go to different conferences and teach, either speak at the she could go to a writer's conference and speak at the writer's conference regarding various elements that she researched for her book, right? She could also talk about what her revision process is. She could talk about, you know, anything associated with the topics within that novel. What she can also do is, who do you think, Michelle, who do you think would be your primary readership? Like, who would be most interested in reading your book?
$18 to 15-year-old males, 18 to 50-year-old males is what I've been told my target audience is on it.
Got it. So you would want to then look up different gatherings where you would find 18 to 50-year-old males. So that could be a Comic-Con.
Yep,
So,
I do go to Comic-Cons. I've spoken at one too.
right, exactly. So that's what I mean by you want to find where your readers are. And I know all of us have been to a zillion different writers conferences, right? And you are going to find some readers there, but there's a whole world of potential readers that don't have anything to do with writing, right? They just want to read the story. So an example would be, we actually went to San Diego Comic Fest, which is a smaller version of San Diego Comic-Con. And we brought a bunch of our books, excuse me, that had more of a fantasy, sci-fi, thriller bend, right? It had that a flavor of that, of those genres. And we sold out of several of our books. Now, you know, I only went because one of my authors was he got the table and offered for us to be there. And I would have never guessed that we would have sold out. But to exactly what Michelle's describing, right? Because of those the stories that we published, some of them had that bend to it. That is really a large segment that is interested in those types of stories. And again, although it's a comic fest, so really you'd assume all the attendees are really interested in our comic books. It's not true. They're oftentimes multiple readers, right? So you want to go to places where that readership is going to be, and it does not have to be something that's related directly to your book. It's where those potential readers are going to be present. Does that make sense? So I'm going to challenge you guys to maybe take 5-10 minutes and just be creative, right? Just do a search on, it could be conferences, it can be comic fests. Hey, maybe it's like the LA County Fair. I hear the San Diego Fair is a lot of fun. Any place where your potential readers would be. And to Michelle's point, you want anybody who's interested potentially, even if your target audience you've been told is 18 to 50-year-old men. I personally would never say no to a sale. So this is just a way to help you better target where you're going to be and who you're going to get in front of in order to put your story forward. This could also be like, are you great at social media, right? Do you have a decent social media following? Could you teach a class on developing a social media following? It can be anything. Another example, let's say you do jujitsu. Are you a great kickboxer? Are you a fantastic gardener? Right? This is all about you getting the word out about you as a brand and what you are fabulous at. That then becomes a part of your platform, and it builds a fan base. It also makes you more attractive to agents and publishers, because the more people that you can attract, the the more potential fans that you may have when the book comes out.
Lisa, there's a question in the chat. Are you involved with using Facebook to market books?
I have used Facebook more so not to market books. I've used it, so I've promoted different live streaming events that we've had. And then I use that as a companion to, people can then sign up and register to find out more about us. And that includes like receiving a newsletter. It can include, getting a sample copy, stuff like that. We've done that a couple of times. It was okay. Right now, though, I think Facebook, they run so many ads now that it can be a little bit hard to get people's attention because there are so many ads. But let's see. Daniel's asking for my Facebook page. I'll give you guys all of my social media links before the end of this. And I see we've got a few more questions. I'm intentionally staying silent so you guys can focus on the assignment I just gave you. But then, but I'll answer the questions when we all come back. And remember, doing this, it's beneficial whether you're traditionally published or self-published. It's probably more so beneficial for those who are self-published. Okay. Any volunteers to share some of the stuff that you found?
I will. So I actually found a conference in Tucson called Spies, Lies, and Nukes.
Oh, cool.
And I'm thinking, really? And apparently it's hosted by a former CIA covert ops officer, a female. Her name is Valerie Plume. And it shows all the pictures of all the speakers. So I found that very interesting. It's too bad it was in May because I can't go, but I'll have to wait till next year. But that sounds really, really interesting.
Well, and what you can do, so an example, like a personal example, I built a pitch around what I thought, like I found several conferences that I thought would be good for me to go to. Again, though, more so from a publisher perspective, right? To attract not necessarily readers, but to attract new authors and potentially new editors. And so I built a pitch around what I thought they would think was most interesting about me, right? So part of it's what Michelle had read in terms of my bio, but I started off with, Running Wild publishes great stories that don't fit neatly in a box. Rise publishes great stories written by people of color and other underrepresented groups. I talked about the different awards that we've won. And I talked about if they wanted me to teach a workshop, I could teach on, self-editing. I could teach on how to build a story, right? How to outline it. All that kind of stuff. Again, basically the equivalent of like one email, right? So that they're not scrolling through it, right? It's not super long, but it's enough for them to say, oh, wow, okay, she's pretty interesting. I think I want her to come and talk, right? And then I sent it to several conferences that were coming up in the next year. So it didn't necessarily have to be tomorrow. It could be something that's coming up, in early 2023. And I actually got several responses that were interested. I also picked ones that were not just for writers conferences, but like libraries, the American Library Association, right? Because believe it or not, that's going to be that's a potential fan base. I want librarians to love our books because I want librarians to pick them up. So then those people who go to their libraries are then interested in reading us and potentially, buying our books, right? Because I not only want our books to sell, but I want I want our authors to be able to build on that fan base. I picked like anything associated with like a school district, right? Again, an opportunity to get me in front of those who have the purchasing power or who influence the purchasing of books. So, and again, that my pitch to them wasn't, hey, I want you to buy my book. My pitch to them is you would find benefit in me being there. You'd find benefit in me talking. This is how the people who are attending your conference or who are attending your workshop would be interested in hearing me talk. Make sense? Anybody else willing to share? And I admit this is hard. This is not simple. It's not easy. It's something you may want to think about, even what kind of conferences would you love to go to outside of writers' conferences? Like, are you a science fiction writer? Is there like a science fiction conference where people nerd out on like Star Trek? Is there a Star Trek conference? Like, how cool would that be? Even though you're not writing Star Trek books, but you're writing science fiction, and those fans of Star Trek may be interested in your stories. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, I found something really interesting. It's a taco and book swap in Silver Lake for mystery writers, but I'm wondering if I have to be in the Mystery Writers of America first to go to this backyard function. I have to find that out, because to come to this, and I think she was a former chef anyway, so the tacos will be good. It's only $5, but the membership would be $115 if I needed to join. So has anyone else a member of the Mystery Writers of America? I think I should join some of these things. Mystery is what I write, so.
Got it.
But just to get, a $5 taco, I don't know. But what a schmooze fest if I went.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And it sounds fun.
And it sounds fun. Yeah, exactly. Like it's that kind of thing, right? Where you already know these are people who would be interested in the kind of writing that you do, right? So yeah, definitely. That's fabulous. May I ask, is it specify that they're associated with the Mystery Writers of America, or?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Got it.
She's
Yeah.
a member that's hosting it. So I don't know. Do they have cards? Do you have to show your can I fake one? No. Just kidding.
Probably not.
As a mystery writer, I should come up with something.
Yeah. Might be good. I'm sorry. I'm going. That was fabulous. Thank you, Jerry. I mentioned that we've got there's 3 parts to this, right? So part 1 was building your roadmap for actually writing, right, and helping you focus on, stay focused on what your vision is for yourself. Part 2 was building your own personal brand, right? So again, identifying places that where you can take those things that you're fabulous at and that align to your vision, and going forward and pitching yourself to speak at these different locations, or write for them, or, whatever the case may be. It's really about getting you in front of people, which I know for a lot of writers is scary. Admittedly, though, it's one of the best ways for you to build a fan base. Part 3 is going to be, we actually give all of our writers a marketing plan. And I don't know, Michelle, is there a way, I'm just looking up our template for it. Is there a way that I can share, send that out to everyone?
Yeah, if you want to send it to the Diamond Valley Writers Guild Gmail, I can make
Okay.
sure that the entire membership, that everybody gets it. If you want to screen share at any point, you can do that today too. So.
Okay. All right, cool. And I know there were several questions around marketing and publicity. So I have a ton of resources around that. Again, because in all honesty, a lot of it is because we are a publisher, and so I have access to a lot of materials that you may not have access to. And I'm happy to share them. So I am, and I apologize, I should have done this before. I know, Gerald, you've mentioned that you felt stalled. What you may want to do, and I don't know if they do this, I'm guessing that they would. You want to go to those places like BookBub. And you can offer your book at a discount, and BookBub charges for it. Admittedly, though, BookBub also, even though you they charge you for it and you reduce the price of your book to like 99 cents or $1.99 or something like that, it actually does usually sell really well by using BookBub. So it may be worth you going after that. And again,
Can I just
Yeah.
mention, I did ask about audiobooks. Do you have any tips on how to sell an audiobook?
so for a little while, we used Audible to have our audiobooks created. To be honest, it was so much work that we stopped doing it. And so we now license out the rights. Usually it's with like a Blackstone, and Blackstone, they typically do all the publicity around it. So you may want to look up like a Blackstone audio and see how they are publicizing their audiobooks to help you get ideas on how to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so let me do this. Huh. All right, so I'm actually just going to reply to the message that was sent out. So what I'm sending you guys are several marketing guides that have a ton of ideas and different ways and recommendations. For how to get the word out. We don't have to go through these during this call. What I'm looking for us to go through is, so whenever we first sign an author, we send them this guide that I can't believe I'm like brain farting and not finding right now. So we send them a couple things.
Are you sending those to the Diamond Valley Writers Guild email right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
send it. I just sent
I'll forward
you.
it.
I just sent you 4 PDFs of different recommendations. I'm also, what I'm going to send you and that I'll actually share is a publicity plan template. And now I'm going to send that to you now. I didn't send it yet, so I'm going to send it in a minute. And this one we'll actually go through together. Okay. And I will share my screen. Okay. Can you guys, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So make this bigger.
Yes.
So we've developed this publicity plan. Now, the precursor to this is we actually also have a marketing questionnaire. And the marketing questionnaire is kind of to challenge you to really think about like a lot of the questions that we've already asked ourselves, right? Who do you want to be when you grow up? What's your mission and vision? What do you want to do, Jerry? You don't have to take a shot of this because you're getting this in email. Michelle's going to send it out. And plus it won't be as effective if you take a screenshot, because this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 different tabs that you're going to be leveraging for publicity. So, and yeah, so it probably won't be as effective as a screenshot. So what we've done is we've done a ton of homework, and we've looked up, the first tab is around reviewers and awards, right? So part of the questionnaire that you get when you're an author with us asks you things like, what genres are related to the book that you've written, right? So, you know, maybe you've written a romance, thriller, fantasy book. What this then does is you can then go through this and identify what awards and reviews are associated with your book could be good to send to. Some places specify they want the publisher to send it. Some places specify that they want, they prefer it from the author. A lot of bloggers, they don't want to hear from the publisher. They want to hear from the author, right? So typically what we do is you go through and identify those that you're most interested in. And, you know, if it's someplace that that they want to hear from the publisher, you just let us know. Then when your book's ready, we send it to them. If it's someplace that specifies they're interested in the author, you know, then you got it right here. It's at the tip of your fingers. So we specify any kind of notes around it, right? So if they in the past have said exactly what they're looking for, like Ellis Book Corner, they're looking for fantasy, romance, comedy, contemporary thriller, right? LG Writes is a blogger. Again, you know, some of these we may not have notes on it, and if not, just look them up, right, and see exactly what it is that they want. Bloggers are great. Reviews, they're usually looking for to do a review minimally 4 months prior to publication. So keep that in mind. And again, these are the top are like Bram Stoker is obviously it's an award, right? They're also going to specify time frame associated with when your book comes out and for when you submit it. The bottom half are more around industry reviewers. So these guys, they are going to specify minimally 4 months prior to publication, most likely. Again, they'll say within on their site exactly where you know when they want to get it. So. And we try to build on this too, because, you know, new opportunities, new bloggers, new reviewers come up all the time. And, you know, so, you know, sometimes our authors will come to us and say, oh, you know, you don't have X, Y, or Z. Hey, that's great. You know, thank you for letting me know. And then, you know, let's add to it. The second one is around blurbs. Now, I've had several people ask me in the past, what's really the advantage of a blurb? And if you don't know what a blurb is typically someone who's already an established author or someone who's prominent within the world that you've written about, right? So, you know, Michelle mentioned that she wrote, it's related to it's a military-based story, right? So, you know, she may find benefit in having someone who's well known from within that same, you know, military base to write a blurb about the story, like how realistic it is or how wonderful it is or whatever the case may be, right? So I want to challenge you guys to go big, right? Don't just go for Joe who you know around the corner. If you are a huge fan of like Stephen King, why not? Ask him. Part of it is also being realistic. Don't ask for the blurb, you know, like a month before you need it. Ask for blurbs at least 6 months or more prior to when you need it. And the reason for that is to give them time, because all of these guys have crazy schedules. They're, you know, working their butts off, and most will be more than happy to write a blurb for you, or minimally at least read your book. Gerald, this is good for you as well, by the way, even though your book's already published, because you can ask for blurbs whenever you want. It doesn't have to be before the book comes out. It can be after the books come out, right? They don't know. It's also, again, it's a great way to network and get more people interested in your stories. So just a thought. Also think about it being potential influencers, like social media influencers, that kind of thing. You want to list that out as well. And then this is nice because we have it out where if you've got any notes around the individual, like to kind of attract them to you, we have a section for status, their contact information, and if you sent them like an ARC or like a digital copy, whatever the case may be. So you can track all the activity around this as well. So I'm going to pause real fast because I see there's a bunch of comments in the chat. Oh, there was a question about what's the advantage of having a pen name. That's kind of split right now. I have an author who, in terms of opinion, some feel as though there's no advantage in having a pen name. Others who write in multiple, it used to be back in the day, if you wrote in multiple genres, like you wrote romance and you wrote horror, that you used a pen name either for both or one of them, because they're so wildly different and they have such distinct fans that you wouldn't want to be known for both, right? Meaning the same name against both. There are others though now, I mean, at this juncture, so many authors who are very well established write under their own name in multiple genres that they don't really see an advantage to having pen names anymore. That said, I mean, I know Daniel was joking in his response of, you know, you can't get sued or assassinated. I actually have an author with us who wrote a gorgeous, gorgeous novel that actually has gotten a lot of attention, and he used a pen name. And we went back and forth on it because we were like, we don't, you know, you should really just use your own name. But his day job is as a psychiatrist. And so his concern was that if he published under his own name, it actually could open up for him to, it could open a world of challenges, I guess is a polite way to put it. So there are those that they absolutely find an advantage to writing and appending. Jerry asked, could you mention the mystery publication I mentioned earlier? I actually queried Weird Tales, the magazine. Weird Tales, they do take queries, but they also, it's only on, it's a very limited time frame, and they actually usually ask you to submit to them. So they do open calls, but you wanna look for it, right? Let's see. Oh, and back to the audiobook thing. This is good for audiobooks as well, what I'm sharing now, because there are audiobook reviewers. I don't have audiobook reviewers listed in here, again, because we now license out the right for that, but you can use all the same stuff for it. Let's see. Awesome. Marge mentions that she's speaking at the South Dakota Festival of Books. That's fabulous. And mentions that she's going to be on a panel. Guessing it might increase my fan base by 2 or 3 people. How can one increase pull at such conferences? You know, mention it. You can mention it on social media. Actually, I hosted a panel at the Association of Writers and Writing Programs pre-COVID. And we did 2 panels. And we also hosted an after hours event at a bar where people did a reading. We invited them to read, and it ended up, the room was full for the panels, and we actually had a really decent number of people who showed up at the public reading. Really, it's all about, I mean, just going out there and mentioning whenever you have an opportunity that you're going to be speaking, what you're going to be speaking about, and openly inviting people to go, right? Because sometimes when we mention stuff like this, we forget to say, and I'd love to see you there, right? So, you know, keep that in mind. I hope that helps. And so to Wanda's point, she's a member of Sisters in Crime. Yeah, honestly, organizations like that are fabulous because they go back and they tap their community, in like VoucherCon, which I'm sure I'm saying wrong. They actually tap their pre-existing author community for ways for publicizing and so on. And they're usually really good at spreading the word and helping you in spreading the word. Teresa mentions that she's used Audible for all of her books and it's been well worth it and not difficult. That's fabulous. We actually still get paid for our, we still get royalties off of the Audible books that we put out there. So how do I protect what I write? So Hap, I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. I would not recommend, you know, you could copyright your story. If you want to have it published though, traditionally, I don't recommend copywriting it. It's going to turn off, I don't know of a publisher that will print an already copywritten story. It's perceived as unprofessional. But if you're planning on self-publishing or if you're planning on self-publishing, then yeah, you can easily just do a search on how to copyright and you can have your book copywritten. Other than that, it's very, very, very unlikely that a publisher or an agent is going to steal your work. There's so, like, you get so many stories. There's so much work out there. Don't be surprised if you see people publish stories similar to yours, because that's very common. Because we all, you know, we all have, we all get inspiration from a variety of sources, and you know, that's, again, like I said, that's not uncommon. But I'd be very surprised if somebody actively took a piece and published it under their own name, like word for word. So, okay. And Michelle has sent the emails for everyone with all the handouts. Let's see. Oh, so Marge asks, I know it's expensive, but do you suggest hiring your own publicist? Blackstone assigned one to me, but she did nothing. Not one outreach. Yeah, a lot of not an interview or appearance or book club. I think, you know, that's another one. Some publicists are gonna more so hand you stuff like what I'm sharing with you now, and they're gonna act more as an advisor. Because in a lot of cases, the expectation is gonna be that you're gonna do stuff on your own. If you want a hands-on publicist, I'd say interview them to find out if they're going to do for you what you want them or you need them to do. I have had authors who hired publicists and it increased book sales. I wouldn't say that their activity increased book sales dramatically. I had one author who brought on a well-known publicist who's actually written a book on how to publicize your work. And, you know, I think it increased her sales. Maybe she sold like 800 books instead of, 300 books. So it wasn't in the thousands. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't what she had hoped for. So, I'd say, again, go ahead and interview them and make sure that they're going to do what you need them to do. Let's see.
On the publicist question, excuse me, there's several of them out there. I mean, Fazia Burke, she was a speaker, 3 months ago. She has a whole division. If you're looking for someone to hire as a publicist, you might want to look her up. There's a bunch of them though. You just have to Google it.
And you've
Are
got
we done with the screen share, do you think?
Oh,
you wanna...
no, I was going to go to the next one if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to address people's questions. That's all. I apologize. Yeah, so yeah, just definitely interview them just to make sure they're going to do what you want them to do. Again, so we've got a list of the bloggers and bookstagrammers. This is another one. They're going to specify exactly what it is that they want to see from you. I again, go for it. Go for as many as you can. We have a couple of listing of some giveaways. I've seen some authors do really well with like a Goodreads giveaway. That's going to be another one. It's very heavily dependent on your the publicity done around that Goodreads giveaway, because I've seen them to be very, very successful, and I've seen instances where it doesn't really do anything for you. We also list out different appearances that you could be making, a variety of video and podcasters, potentials, different bookstores. So that's another one. It's well worth for you to build, if you want to build a following, to select a variety of bookstores to make an appearance at. You may even want to check out your local libraries and see if they do book author appearances. Some do. And then here are a ton of conferences, as well as those that you guys have already searched on. And then this is just a sample calendar of different events and the kind of panels that you can do. Also list out for you to help you kind of brainstorm what are some of the different talking points that you can bring forward when you're going to these events, when you're putting yourself forward to speak. So like some of the book themes for me are like around empowerment, the different genres that I could potentially speak about. What are the different communities that may be interested in hearing from me? So like I said, I grew up in Camden, I live in LA, but I've also lived in Philadelphia. I used to work in New York. I lived in Burbank. I have relatives in San Francisco, Ohio, Chicago. There's a variety of communities that may be interested in having me. So like my alma maters, right? I'm a graduate of Drexel University, Penn State, Fairfield University. I've attended Yale Writers Workshop, Red Loaf, Squaw Valley, Penn Writers. I used to be the president of Penn Writers. StokerCon might want to hear from me. VoucherCon, might want to hear from me. Some other like street fighting. So I intentionally have it in my book where the primary characters, they're not jujitsu certified, right? They haven't been trained, but they know how to street fight, because I wanted this to be something where a reader could read this and actually be able to take some of the street fighting techniques, which I like to call cheating, and use them for self-protection. Like punching someone in the throat is actually a great technique to, if you want to knock someone out. Anyone who might be interested in terms of like my heritage, if any of that comes up, like I'm primarily Eastern European. In terms of things that I've researched as a part of my book, so I have my characters travel across the US. They also go to Sweden. It involves the burqa, right? So I know a lot about, so the burqa is one of the most famous Swedish Viking warriors. So I could actually go and talk about things like that. In terms of relationships, I have all these different relationships within my book. So I could talk, potentially about family dynamics. In terms of my personal process, I can talk about, how to get inspired or find inspiration for different themes, like for future stories. I can talk about outlining, how to outline. I can talk about structures. I can talk about character building techniques that I've leveraged. So this is a great way for you to, again, sit down and figure out, what can you talk about? And finding additional fan bases, as well as additional places that may want to hear you talk. So, and then again, a few more, there's another tab around publicity ideas. So a lot of people love to do cover reveals. Just make sure you work with your publisher, and I'm sure you guys already know this. But you could do a cover reveal. It could be through social media. It could be on Goodreads. Again, the Goodreads giveaway. And in all honesty, every single one of these things, the success around it is really based in your own publicity. So you taking that one moment, that one, that one forum, and really spend time on sending out, doing email blasts, right? To, if you've got a newsletter, right? You want to make sure it's on your website. You want to make sure you post it on your social media areas. The authors that I personally have on in our slate, who are the most successful with stuff like this, that's exactly what they do. So, they don't just do a cover reveal, they do a whole campaign leading up to that cover reveal, and they get the word out about the cover reveal. And so that when the cover reveal at the time comes for it, they get a really good response, right? So none of this is done in isolation. All of this is done with a lot with intent. Any questions around these things?
I'd like to just say something about cover reveals. Recently, one of my favorite authors, Pierce Brown, I don't know if you know Pierce, Lisa, but he's been leading up for 2 months to his cover reveal. His fans been waiting a couple of years now for his 6th book.
Mm-hmm.
And he just built up such a frenzy, and he finally revealed yesterday, I believe. And I think he had like 14,000 likes in an hour and a half. Crazy, because then he revealed 2 covers. No one knew he was doing a 6th and a 7th book. And so the crowd went wild, as it were. And, you know, pre-order was already there on his Instagram and website. And I'm sure, you know, his first book was a New York Times bestseller. I'm sure it's going to continue in that, but yeah, he did it right. He absolutely did it right. So.
And so to Michelle's point, you know, it wasn't just a cover reveal. He actually also had a pre-order link, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that all of this, it's all about piggybacking, you know, I mean, that it's figuring out, taking like this type of plan, right? And taking all of this information and actively planning it out. And figuring out, like, especially those things that you have, it's within your center of control, like a book reveal, like a Goodreads giveaway. You know, maybe you do you guest appear on different audio podcasts, right? Things like that. In the past, I've had people ask me like, hey, should I start my own podcast? Well, you know, the reality is, if you don't already have a podcast and you're not planning on maintaining it after your book is published, it's probably not a good idea, a great idea. You're not going to get what you want, right? Because no one knows you. If what is a great idea is going out and querying and pitching pre-existing podcasts and pre-existing bloggers and so on, because they already have a fan base. So you're only building upon your potential fans, you're building your brand, right? And all that. And again, though, exactly to Michelle's point, make sure you've got that pre-order link ready, right? Make sure, and if you don't have a pre-order yet, that's okay. You can still go out and let them know, like, hey, my book's going to come out in, you know, the fall of 2022 or the fall of 2023 or whatever it is. And be sure to follow up with that podcaster or with that blogger when your book link is ready, so that they have it, and then they can then share it with those potential fans. Does that make sense? So I know this was a lot, and I really thank you guys for hanging in there with me. At this point, you probably are all starving and B, tired. Are there any, I want to open up the floor for additional questions.
don't be shy. Somebody just jump in there.
What about movie rights?
Movie rights? May I ask what's the, I don't really understand the question. I apologize.
Well, you know, you got a great book. Everybody loves it. How do you break into the movie industry where they're calling you and, you know, wanting to make a major motion picture?
Got it. So that whole industry's changed dramatically with the expansion of SVOD, right? So like with the Netflixes and Amazon Studios, right? I heard MGM used to just be a catalog in essence, like they would, you know, license out their films all the time. From what I hear, they're actually restarting their studio. So they're actually looking for material as well. It's typically how it works is you get an agent, and that agent will work with you on developing something called a log line and something called the one pager. So the log line is basically your brief pitch, right? This is why it's fabulous. The one pager is basically your back jacket copy. It's your bio. It usually has a snapshot of the cover of your book, and it may have your picture in it, right? And they then will go around to producers, directors, studios, and pitch it to be licensed. Now, what happens is they're usually only, they're basically pitching, they're basically getting, you're going to get paid for the right, for that producer, studio, whomever, to possibly make it into a film for like the next 2 years, right? And then the rights are released again. It's not typically like forever. It used to be that when they were getting the rights for a work, you'd get paid a nice chunk of change. Like I knew an author, she's quite prolific. She writes a couple of different romance series, and she got something crazy like $50,000. This was back in like 2000 for one of hers to be made into a TV series, right? I don't think they ever did it, to be honest. Nowadays, though, because it's such a huge industry, and there are so many potential buyers, and they're buying the rights to potentially use the stories for so many stories. You're lucky if you get 5,000 for it to be used over like 2 years. So many of these guys are, even for a studio, when the studio is getting the rights to potentially use it, they then have to get, find a producer who's interested in it, and a director who's interested in it, and, some names who might be interested in being a part of it, right? So it's a very long process. I also know several producers, and by the way, your story doesn't have to be published for it to get the rights to be licensed by a producer. I actually have a friend of mine, I know a couple of producers, and who've acquired stories based on the concept, and the books have never been published. So you could actually, if you wanted to, you could go and look up, who are the producers for stories that are similar to yours. And if you wanted to, you could pitch them. You just need to find out how. Most of them are pretty specific in terms of how they prefer to be pitched to. So, yep.
And to be clear, when you're talking about that sort of payment, you're talking about an option, not
Correct.
actually not actually paying for the story, just the option to then negotiate to pay you for the story.
Correct. So, well, when it's optioned, you're getting paid like, $5,000.
$5,000, yeah. I just want to make sure they understood that. If someone picks it up, then at that point, your agent would negotiate what you actually get paid for the story when they're going to make it go into pre-production, right?
Correct. And, you should be getting royalties based on the sales associated with it once it's actually out in the world. It doesn't always happen, especially if you're an unknown. Sometimes, admittedly, they'll take advantage of that, and they'll say, no, we're only going to give you this flat fee of like, $50K or something. So, which is unfortunate, but yeah, the better known you are, the more of a name you are, the more you're going to get paid, the higher your potential royalties. So.
Well,
You
Lisa,
get one of those Kirkus Reviews, or however you say that.
Mm-hmm. Kirkus.
Kirkus. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you get one?
Kirkus has a couple of different ways of doing it. Same with Publishers Weekly. They have it where you could actually pay for the review, and you just go to the site, and Kirkus has the indie review section. You can also just simply submit it. Now, when you're submitting to industry reviews, there's no guarantee that they're going to pick it to review it, because their reviewers select what books they want to review. But yeah, just send it.
okay, well, Lisa, I want to thank you very much for.
Before we segue very quickly, Lisa, probably what's foremost in a lot of these writers' minds is that you are a publisher.
Mhm.
And so you look at books to publish. So if someone wanted to submit a book to you, when do you have your open submission? What is your process? Because that's probably foremost in a lot of these people's minds, I would assume.
That's a great question. So let me share with you. So we use Submittable. Our submission period, we're always open, by the way. We don't have a specific time frame to submit for anything full length. Actually, no, I changed it for anything, because we actually also do we do a short story anthology every year, and we do a novella anthology every year, one for Running Wild and one for Rise. Again, 365 days a year, you can submit your work to us. What we typically do though is we recently actually changed our process. We now about every, I'd say 3 to 4 months, probably more closer to 4 months. Myself, I have 2 acquisition editors. I have, we also, as I mentioned, we have an agency that we work with in terms of licensing. And I have someone who she's the primary who handles all of the work on our end associated with licensing, because it's honestly, it's a lot of work, right? Because you're doing everything from log lines, you build pitches, everybody has their own way that they prefer to see a pitch, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we all sit down and it usually takes potentially 2 rounds, and we go through our top candidates of who we want to, what stories we want to acquire. Everybody within that board has a say in terms of what stories picked up, because they are also all familiar with our back catalog of stories, as well as what we've already acquired for the next 2 years potentially. And then we pick what stories, full-length works we want to purchase for the upcoming years. We then notify those authors, that we'd love to make them an offer. That said, the last time we did this, we had over 800 submissions. I was able to narrow it down to I think it was 170 that were of potentials for us to acquire. And then we made offers, because we only print between 15 to 20 books per year per press. And so with that in mind, that means that we're not going to be able to acquire 178 stories. So what we do, we've actually already acquired books for 2023. We're almost full for 2024. So this round, we're going to be looking for a couple of books to publish in 2024, and then in 2025. The short stories are usually edited by, I have one specific editor who typically does short stories. He usually goes through them once a year. So if you don't hear anything, don't panic. It's all good. We will get back to you. I usually edit our novella anthologies. I pretty much do the same. It's about once a year. I'll go through them. One thing I want to make sure, if for you guys who may not be traditionally published, or you haven't been published yet, just to be aware, most publishers are going to, it's probably going to be at least a year, if not longer, before your book comes out. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that if that publisher uses a standard distributor, that distributor, they insist on having all of the information, right? All the metadata, as well as the ebook in their hands 9 to 12 months before the actual publication date. And the reason for that is because they all have a sales team, and that sales team, they get in front of libraries and bookstores and, the Walmarts of the world, right? And they typically have a mini sales conference as well, where the publisher comes on and they get like 2 minutes per book to pitch those stories. And because there's so much lead time that they need in order to get in front of all of those different potential buyers, that's why they're asking for all your materials 9 to 12 months beforehand. So don't panic. I've had a few authors who got really upset and they were like, what do you mean you're not going to publish me until like the end of 2023? Well, there's a reason. You know, if you actually want a sales force behind you, this is what the reality is, right? So.
Well, Lisa, thank you very much for your workshop, and we appreciate your attending and giving that to us. And I just want to mention for next month, we're going to have our annual poetry event. I think it's our 7th one, and we always have some great submissions for the poetry. And for those poets among you, make sure you participate. Just let me know that you want to be part of the poetry event, and you will be in. And I always like to say poetry is perfect. There's no such thing as a bad poem, and we'll accept every poem, even the ones that you think may not be so great. They're great to us. So it's a chance to have your work heard, which is one of the major things about poetry. It's one thing to write it. It's another thing for people to hear it. And I always enjoy it. So that'll be the 27th of next month. We'll be having our annual event. And I want to thank you all for your patience in attending, and we'll see you next time. Okay, over and